Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif is the man tasked with the mission to save the nuclear deal without surrendering to Donald Trump's maximum pressure strategy. It's a very tough challenge. But Zarif is not new on the international diplomacy turf. He knows the US very well and has been involved in Iran's foreign policy for a long time. Born to a religious and rather conservative family who prevented him access to newspapers and television for most of his youth, he moved to the US when he was 17, and he lived for almost 30 years. But make no mistake, he remains an embodiment of Iran's culture and values. In a book on his memoirs, he says, quote, "I always kept my Islamic and Iranian culture and customs. Even now, Western lifestyle feels strange to me." He never wears a necktie, sticking to the Iranian revolutionary principle which defined ties as symbols of Westernization. He still avoids shaking hands with women, whatever their rank. But he is far from being an ideological bigot. Joe Biden, Obama's vice president, says, and I quote, "He is a tough advocate, but he's also pragmatic, not dogmatic. He can play an important role in helping to resolve our significant differences with Iran peacefully." Others do not have the same kind words for him. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's a liar. The US National Security Advisor and one of Zarif's bitterest rivals, John Bolton, thinks he is just smoke in the world's eyes. He says, and I quote, "He's very used to Western habits, so he is the perfect face for an unreasonable regime. But he has no independent discretion on what he does." When the 1979 revolution broke out in Iran, Zarif was in the States, and his knowledge on the country and the language helped him gain access into the Iranian foreign mission to Washington. He climbed the ladder and was appointed Iran's representative at the United Nations in 2002. He started working to improve relations between Iran and the West, trying to find a way to discuss Iran's nuclear program without hurting Iran's interests. But when the hardliner Mahmoud Ahmadinejad became Iran's president in 2005, Zarif was sidelined. The new president had no real intention to restore ties with the West, let alone with the US. In 2013, the newly elected President Rouhani appointed Zarif to the country's foreign ministry. Rouhani knew that he was the only diplomat who could restore Iran's international reputation and negotiate an end to the hard-hitting multilateral sanctions. And that's what Zarif did. In 2013, on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, Zarif met the then US Secretary of State John Kerry. It was the first time in 34 years that representatives of the US and Iran held a public meeting.
We had a constructive meeting, and I think all of us were pleased that Foreign Minister Zarif came and made a presentation to us which was very different in tone and very different in the vision that he held out with respect to the possibilities of the future.
It was the beginning of the journey which brought to the now semi-defunct 2015 nuclear deal. Zarif's soft-spoken and disciplined behavior hides a very tough negotiator, though. He staunchly represents his country's interest and never backs an inch. He engages in all possible spaces to push Iran's narrative, from the UN to the multinational fora. He regularly appears on international media and is very active on social media. Zarif is a prolific Twitter user and has a bulk of 1.2 million followers. Little happens between Tehran and Washington without him tweeting about it. It seems Tehran has got the right man for the job. It now remains to be seen if he can actually get it done. Surely the current US administration has found in him a tougher and wittier negotiator than expected.